The Tories, probably more than anyone else, know that they are incredibly unpopular right now. So doing something that would make them even more unpopular is probably not going to be a good idea. Yet recently, we have had two things just in the last, 24, 48 hours, where not only have we had a complete and utter Tory U-turn, but we are also seeing, as I said, there would be a huge pushback against certainly Michael Gove and Theresa Coffey taking away these new protections for polluting or for developments near rivers. We'll see. This is gathering steam. And I want to talk about both because this now seems to be their new idea, their new plan that they want to try and take away some of these, EU protections. Meanwhile, of course, when they do these things, there's a public backlash. And especially when it comes to worker protections, and we'll get on to what they've tried to undo in a moment, but cast your minds back to when James Cleverly was the business secretary, and he merely, not said he was going to, he merely suggested that he might want to get rid of the EU Working Time Directive, to which he was met with an absolute flood of pushback against getting rid of that. So at that point, it was completely dropped. Now, we still don't know whether this is going to be retained. I highly suspect in the next coming days, we are going to see some big fights. But if the Tories have gone this way on this particular bill, on this particular rule, which we're talking about in a moment, I highly think that for the time being, a lot of our rules and worker protections are going to be safe. But as always, we have to bring awareness and that this is what the Tories are doing. So what are they doing? And of course, we get onto the RSPB calling Gove and Coffey liars as well. But before we get into this as well, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button. And of course, there's the Pony Club down below. So what happened? Well, they had taken away an EU law which guarantees at source that both men and women will get equal pay. So this was essentially a big loophole that had previously been in place, that men and women would pretty much be doing the same jobs, but companies could discriminate if they wanted to. The big one was, of course, cleaners. Glasgow City Council has been involved in a long-running dispute on just this thing of where they have had refuse collectors and cleaners paid differently. And of course, the women who were cleaners got £3 less than the men who were refuge collectors. Now, under the previous UK rules, that was fine. Even though we had equal pay acts, that loophole was used. But along comes the EU rule of at source. So it doesn't matter. If you are doing something at source, which is fundamentally the same, you should receive equal pay. And that's what the Tories tried to get rid of very sneakily. It seems to have been done almost in the dead of the night, at least an attempt to. But Labour saw this and went, yeah, if you're going to get rid of that, then the second we come back into power, we're putting it back in. Which immediately, within hours of Labour announcing that, because they knew they could make it a big election issue, the Tories have now U-turned on it and said, oh no, we're going to bring that back in as secondary parliamentary legislation within the end of the year. Don't worry. And remember, the retained EU law bill is now technically, a law, unfortunately. It really shouldn't have been passed, but there you have it. So we've got to really be careful on all these EU rules, laws, and regulations that they could be getting rid of that could be, to be honest, very good election winners. And I think they know it. That's why there was such a fast reaction from the Tories, because they did not want to give, or at least they didn't want to look bad, shall we say, by a look as if they were stripping women of equal pay, because, well, how's that going to play at a general election, especially to women voters? It's not going to go down very well at all. But what's the other thing they're doing? Well, we've talked very recently, of course, about the scrapping of environmental protections, especially when it comes to building developments near rivers. This has slowly but surely been gathering a lot of criticism. And recently, we have had, let me get her name. Oh, where is it? That's it. Here we are. So the chair of the Office for Environmental Protection, that's the OPE. This is the new body, by the way, which was set up post-Brexit. And its job was to help protect the environment. Key problem, of course, underfunded, made on purpose to be completely toothless, and it can do pretty much nothing. Made to protect the environment, but it can do nothing. This is what we said would happen. This is exactly what they have done. And even more, now they are moving against this. So this letter was written to Theresa Coffey and Michael Gove by Dame Gladys Stacey about the proposed amendment. So this is what she had to say. These proposed changes would demonstrably reduce the level of environmental protection provided in the existing environmental law. They are a regression. Yet the government has not adequately explained how, alongside such the weakening of environmental law, these new policy measures will ensure that it still meets its obligations for water quality and the protection of site conditions. Bear in mind, the OPA, that's the Office for Environmental Protection, which was set up to replace the EU enforcing environmental law, has been labelled completely and absolutely toothless. And it has asked both Coffey and Gove to come before Parliament to actually describe how this is intended to work, because it gets so ridiculous when you look more into this. So this is what they need to really examine. So it is essential to try and clarify this Section 20 statement made to Parliament in light of the government's intention to weaken the habitats regulations. If necessary, ministers should make the statement equivalent that is required by Section 20-4 and confirm that they are no longer able to say that the bill would not reduce the level of environmental protection provided by any existing environmental law. But the government nevertheless wishes Parliament to proceed. England's important wildlife areas are already at risk, and many are increasingly in a precarious state, in which their condition is now well below where it needs to be. This is often due to nutrient pollution, which is what these new developments will cause. But she continues, the new developments can be a significant contributor to this. So what's going to be brought in? Well, according to this, what's going to happen is that there is going to be, quote, extra funding. How much extra funding? No one has said. I doubt, to be honest, very little, for Natural England. This is the new nature watchdog that they have also set up, and that they will have enough funding that will be able to offset any pollution on this. To which we then got the RSPB, and bear in mind, the RSPB, not known for, well, it is obviously there for protecting, the environment, but it comes out and it's publicly called Gove and Coffey liars, and has accused them of breaking their Brexit promises that Brexit would improve the UK's environment and would not weaken any EU-derived environmental laws. So you might think, oh, the RSPB coming out and calling them liars. Well, no, for that charity to come out and call them liars is actually pretty strong. So the gathering against more and more of this stripping of retained EU law is, as we said it would, there would always be a severe public backlash. And I've made it clear that when they started to take away some of these regulations, very quickly the public would go, oh, hang on, actually that regulation's really important. Can we actually not take it away? So we'll see, but I always said that the British public would have to become more and more and more in tune with regulation and what that has meant, because we've seen this British government, or at least this current government, not strengthen any current regulations or introduce any new regulations, but instead they are actively seeking to weaken, reduce, or regressing, in this case, environmental protections. And it's not just the environment where they will do it. It will be in workers' rights, building, consumer protections. We have said this numerous times. Brexiteers do not want any form of regulation. And now you have these new bodies to replace the EU's watchdog to enforce these laws. Well, it's completely toothless, can do nothing. So how are they meant to enforce the environmental protections in the first place, which are now getting weaker? It's just another reason why we need to replace the Tories. Desperately. Very quickly indeed. But who knows when that will be, but it will potentially be pretty soon, going into a general election. We'll see what this conference season brings us. But as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.